Drodzy Państwo, dobry wieczór. Szczęść Boże, nazywam się Michał Karnawalski, jestem jezuitą, biblistą i organizatorem tej konferencji, na której witam osoby zgromadzone tutaj na Akademii Katolickiej w Warszawie, Collegium Bobolanum, jak i tych, którzy łączą się z nami przez internet. Konferencja nosi tytuł Przypowieści Jezusa Okiem Rabina. Jest ona organizowana przy okazji obchodów 60-lecia deklaracji Nostra Aetate, o której kilka słów wprowadzenia ze strony profesora Mirosława Wróbla usłyszycie za chwilę. Pozwólcie, że zacznę od przedstawienia głównego prelegenta oraz osoby współorganizatora konferencji. Rabin Joe Charnes jest uczonym i rabinem pełniącym posługę w Temple Aaron w Trinidad w stanie Colorado. Jego nauczanie koncentruje się na eksploracji praktycznych, poetyckich i mistycznych wymiarów żydowskiej mądrości. Jest również głęboko oddany dialogowi międzyreligijnemu. Często występował jako gościnny wykładowca w seminariach na uniwersytetach i w kościołach w całej Ameryce, a także na uniwersytetach w Oksfordzie, Lund i Aberdeen. Współorganizatorem konferencji jest ksiądz profesor Mirosław Wróbel, kierownik Instytutu Nauk Biblijnych KUL, doktor École Biblique w Jerozolimie oraz KUL. Jest ekspertem od targumów aramejskich, konsultant konferencji episkopatu do spraw dialogu katolicko-żydowskiego. Wykład Rabiego będzie miał miejsce w języku angielskim. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Michał Karnawalski. I'm a Jesuit biblical scholar and organizer of this conference. I warmly welcome everyone gathered here at the Catholic Academy in Warsaw, Collegium Bobolanum, as well as those joining us online. The conference is titled The Parables of Jesus in the Eyes of a Rabbi. It is held on the occasion of the 60th anniversary of the Nostra Aetate Declaration, about which Professor Mirosław Wróbel will say a few introductory words. Allow me to introduce first the main speaker and successively the co-organizer of the conference, Rabin Joe Charnes is a scholar and rabbi serving at Temple Aaron in Trinidad, Colorado. His teaching centered around exploring the practical, poetic and mystic dimensions of Jewish wisdom. He is also deeply devoted to interfaith dialogue. He has been a frequent guest lecturer at seminaries, universities and churches across America and at Oxford, Lund and Aberdeen universities in Europe. He is writing a popular-oriented commentary on the Beatitudes of Jesus, exploring the wisdom and beauty in light of Second Temple Jewish spirituality. He is also writing more academically oriented work exploring the parameters of Pauline theology. Rabbi Joe is married to his beautiful wife Sarah, a rabbi and Air Force chaplain, recently retired. They live in the Denver area with the lovely daughter, Yael Emunah. The co-organizer is Reverend Professor Mirosław Wróbel, Director of the Institute of Biblical Studies at Catholic University of Lublin, PhD from École Biblique in Jerusalem, and Catholic University of Lublin. An expert in Aramaic Targums, author of, among others, the book Anti-Judaism and the Gospel of John, consultant to the Polish Episcopal Conference for Catholic Jewish Dialogue. A word on the Nostra Aetate Declaration from the part of Professor Mirosław.
Szanowni Państwo, rabin jeszcze się przygotowuje do swojego wystąpienia. Ja natomiast chciałbym 2 słowa powiedzieć o deklaracji Nostra Aetate, której 60. rocznicę powstania obchodzimy właśnie w tym roku. Mamy taki szczególny kairos. Ta deklaracja zwraca uwagę na istotną rolę wspólnych badań biblijnych, ideologicznych i braterskich rozmów między uczonymi żydowskimi i chrześcijańskimi. Praktycznie to wydarzenie, które mamy dzisiaj, tak pięknie, licznie reprezentowane przez audytorium, tak wspaniałe, wielokulturowe, międzyreligijne i wielonarodowościowe, to jest, kochani, wcielenie w życie właśnie tego, co było duchem tej deklaracji Nostra Aetate. Przeczytam fragment z punktu 4. Skoro więc tak wielkie jest dziedzictwo duchowe wspólne chrześcijanom i Żydom, święty Sobór obecny pragnie ożywić i zalecić obustronne poznanie i poszanowanie, które osiągnąć można zwłaszcza przez studia biblijne i teologiczne oraz przez braterskie rozmowy. Treść tej deklaracji soborowej zostaje pogłębiona i rozwinięta w późniejszych dokumentach kościelnych, szczególnie w dokumencie papieskiej Komisji Biblijnej Naród Żydowski, jego święte pisma w Biblii chrześcijańskiej. W świetle tych dokumentów ten autentyczny dialog między synagogą i Kościołem powinien być oparty na 3 takich fundamentalnych przesłankach. Po pierwsze, poznawanie i rozumienie partnerów dialogu tak, jak oni siebie widzą i jak siebie rozumieją. To jest możliwe tylko wtedy, gdy się spotkamy. Po drugie, szacunek dla partnerów dialogu i ich tożsamości religijnej. I po trzecie, nawiązywanie i rozwijanie współpracy tam, gdzie to możliwe i potrzebne. Ten autentyczny dialog umożliwia osiągnięcie 2 zasadniczych celów. Po pierwsze, głębsze wniknięcie w samą świadomość Kościoła, a po drugie, zmianę niewłaściwego nastawienia wobec wyznawców judaizmu. Wiele jest stereotypów, błędnych, różnych przekonań i dopiero trzeba się spotkać, żeby zobaczyć tę wartość tych, którzy także chcą nam przekazać mądrość. W relacjach Kościoła z judaizmem nie powinno być mowy o jakimkolwiek synkretyzmie religijnym albo prozelityzmie, bo istotą dialogu jest poszanowanie i zachowanie tożsamości każdej ze wspólnot religijnych. Szacunek zakłada zaufanie, bliskość oraz odrzucanie nieufności, podejrzliwości. Braterski dialog wymaga braterskiej troski o siebie nawzajem, o problemy, trudności, przed którymi staje każda ze wspólnot, które się spotykają. Tak jak różni są ludzie i różne mają problemy, tak potrzeba nam również spojrzeć razem na tę naszą egzystencję. I chociaż wiara w Jezusa Chrystusa odróżnia synagogę i Kościół, to jednak można stwierdzić więź, którą lud Nowego Testamentu zespolony jest duchowo z ludem Abrahama. Nie można w pełni zrozumieć nauki Chrystusa oraz przestrzeni narodzin Kościoła bez odniesienia do świata żydowskiego. Osoba Jezusa Chrystusa i chrześcijaństwo pozostaje mocno zakorzenione w judaizmie. W religii żydowskiej tkwią głębokie korzenie chrześcijaństwa, które chrześcijanie mogą rozeznawać właśnie poprzez autentyczny dialog. Żydzi natomiast w dialogu mogą pełniej zrozumieć, w jaki sposób Kościół odczytuje Stary Testament i przyjmuje dziedzictwo judaizmu. I właśnie ten nasz dialog staje się możliwy dzięki obecności wśród nas rabina Joe Charnesa ze Stanów Zjednoczonych. Serdecznie go witamy i zapraszamy na wygłoszenie wykładu o przypowieściach Jezusa Okiem Rabina. Podam jeszcze w języku angielskim: The Nostra Aetate Declaration, the 60th anniversary of which we celebrate this year, draws attention to the significant role of shared biblical and theological research and fraternal conversations between Jewish and Christian scholars. Since, therefore, the spiritual heritage common to Christians and Jews is so great, the Sacred Council wishes to promote and recommend mutual understanding and respect, which can be achieved especially through biblical and theological studies and through fraternal conversation. The content of the conciliar declaration is dependent and developed in later church documents on this subject, especially the document of the Pontifical Biblical Commission entitled The Jewish People and Their Sacred Scriptures in the Christian Bible. In the light of these documents, authentic dialogue between the synagogue and the church should be based on three fundamental principles. First, knowing and understanding the dialogue partners as they see and understand themselves. Second, respect for the dialogue partners and their religious identity. Third, establishing and developing cooperation where possible and necessary. Authentic dialogue enables the achievement of the two fundamental goals. First, a deeper understanding of the church self-awareness, and second, changing in appropriate attitudes towards followers of Judaism. The condition for true and fruitful dialogue should be the preservation of one's own identity. In the church relation with Judaism, there should be no talk of any religious syncretism or proselytism. The essence of dialogue is respect and preservation of the identity of each religious community. Respect entails trust and closeness, as well as the rejection of distrust and suspicion. Fraternal dialogue requires fraternal care for each other, for the problems and difficulties that each religious community faces. Although faith in Jesus Christ distinguishes the synagogue and the church, it can be said that there is a bond that spiritually unites the people of the New Testament with the people of Abraham. The teaching of Jesus Christ and the birth of the church cannot be fully understood without reference to the Jewish word. The person of Jesus Christ and Christianity remain deeply rooted in Judaism. The deep roots of Christianity lie in Jewish religion, which Christians can discern in authentic dialogue. In this dialogue, Jews can more fully understand how the church interprets the Old Testament and accepts the heritage of Judaism. Our dialogue is made possible by the presence of Rabbi Joe among us. We warmly welcome you, Rabbi, and invite you to deliver a lecture on the parables of Jesus through the eyes of Rabbi. Witamy serdecznie.
Shalom, everybody. Many of you have notes that are a summary, a very poor summary, but a summary of some of my reflections, and I apologize up front for not knowing Polish. The only word I know is pravda, which I learned. I thought that was Russian. But I don't know Polish, and I apologize if some of my language is a little too nuanced or poetic or metaphoric, and we can discuss maybe after some of the nuances that may have been lost. The first part of what I'm about to do, I had a thought as I was getting ready for this evening. It's not part of the notes, but I'll try and explain it briefly. I'm grateful to be here. And in the Jewish tradition, this is called a talit or a talis, depending on how you pronounce Hebrew. I pronounce it as talis, but many pronounce it talit. And it's worn during prayer. Morning prayer, generally, or if you lead prayers in the evening or the afternoon, you also wear it. And symbolically, the way the rabbis understand it is it's like the wings of the divine or the heavenly curtain, and we wrap it around us to remind us that we're always under the wings of the divine, and there is something heavenly surrounding us. And tonight, this isn't a prayer service. We're not going to do a Hebrew evening prayer service tonight. But I decided, and I made sure it was okay, I decided to wear it this evening because this feels like not a prayer service, but it's very prayerful. And I can find in my heart no other way to honor better prayer than to wrap myself in the wings of the divine and to surround myself with the heavenly that is always around us. So I'm going to put this on, and I'm wearing this because this does again feel like a moment of prayer. And then I'll begin. At times during prayer we wrap our heads, we cover our heads even more so. And before I begin my actual words, I thought I would begin with melody, because my words may be lost on you. My language may simply not be understandable at times, but melody, song, is something we can all relate to. It's beyond words, and it comes from the heart. So what I thought I would do again is chant a brief melody. It's something that we would chant on a Sabbath over and over again, 10, 15 minutes. It's a long, wordless melody. But I thought I would chant a portion of it here this evening to bring us into the spirit of what Father Vrobel spoke about with Nostra Aetate, of coming together as people of faith. And this to me is the foundation of what you spoke of so beautifully as a true and fruitful dialogue. Melody is always fruitful, and I'll begin with a brief melody from what they call a Hasidic rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi of old with the curlies and the big hats and the big beards. And just listen and see where it leads you. Because it says everything without words. It leads you where you need to be. Ya 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 ya. Ya 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 ya. Tirira ya 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 ya. Ya 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 ya. Ya 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 ya. Tirira ya 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 ya. Haya mama. Haya ya haya ya. Tirira I hope wherever we go in life, that we always are able to find melody and song. Even if the melody is minor, feels sad because we're hurting in life, we have to be able to find song in life. The title that I gave for my presentation this evening is The Parables of Jesus and Their Ancient Jewish Echoes, a rabbinic meditation. And I'll discuss that more as we go through my talk. But I first want to say thank you to Father and Professor Miroslav Robel. It is wonderful to be here with you. And we're not just here, but we're here together in dialogue. In dialogue and in holy reflection. And thank you for all that you have done to bring this event about. Communal dialogue is always a blessing, as we always have much to learn from each other. And when we come together with hearts humbly seeking wisdom, blessedness blossoms in the heart of the soul. So thank you again, my friend, Father and Professor. We met in Uppsala over the summer, and you are a blessing in my life and in our family's life. The world is better because of your presence, and I am grateful our paths have crossed on this plane. And to Father and Professor Michał Kowalski, what a pleasure it has been to meet you and to spend time with you. Your humble, welcoming spirit is a wonderful model for all. And I mean that. I have enjoyed all our meals together. I get to eat with them. But we've also celebrated Mass together. And the Mass was a truly calming influence on my spirit. We have a very beautiful Mass here. Very beautiful soul to the Polish Mass. I've also enjoyed our dialogues, which have nourished me more than our meals. Father and Professor Raphael, bless you, brother. In you I have found a new study partner. What we say in Hebrew, chavruta or chavrusa. It seems like immediately after our hello, we were already analyzing the Pauline epistles, right? The letters of Paul. And then I learned you have a deep, abiding love for parables. So I know we're going to continue the dialogue after this evening ends. And to all those who have helped make this wonderful event happen, I don't know you and I don't know your names, but please know I am grateful for all the work that you have done. We honestly need more events like this, and I look forward to all our future engagements, whenever those may be. It will bring greater healing to our world. Thank you all for coming. It's late, and I pray that my thoughts and my meditations and my reflections, my sacred explorations, I hope they offer meaningful insights into the soul of the holy. because we're all here to discuss and explore the holy. We are on a journey, my friends, a journey of holy discovery, and I look forward to journeying into holy discovery with you. Before I actually begin with my proper talk, I want to say up front that my reflections today are in no way a comprehensive treatment of the parables of Jesus in their ancient poetic Jewish setting. Nor will I be offering a comparative analysis of the parables of Jesus in their ancient Near Eastern ancient Near Eastern parabolic literature. We're not discussing all of those. As important as these areas of studies are, and they are worthy of critical academic analysis, my focus today is very specific and very centered, and the title of my lecture expresses its content. The title again being The Parables of Jesus and Their Ancient Jewish Echoes, a rabbinic meditation. And it is, in truth, a meditation from my heart on the wisdom of the parables of another rabbi's heart, a rabbi named Jesus. You may have heard of him. He's a rabbi from whom we all have much to learn. And what you will hear tonight is how I work with parables in general. This is how I work and reflect, and even in English we would say I walk with, I live with. This is how I work and walk with parables in general in my life. But tonight we will walk with the light of the parables of Jesus, and how I, as a rabbi, might hear his rabbinic teachings that I hope leave you with another way, not the only way, but another way of entering into Jesus' holy words. Jesus himself was a rabbi, and a brilliant one at that. He was well within, theologically speaking, the broadly dynamic world of Pharisaic Judaism. While he may not have been what we say in English, a card-carrying member of the Pharisaic community, and while it is certainly true that he had his differences with their leaders, nevertheless, the world of Pharisaic wisdom and practice was still the cultural ferment out of which his enlightened and healing brilliance blossomed. And we have to understand that world if we want to understand more about Jesus. This ancient Jewish dimension is essential to understanding the profound wisdom in Jesus' parables. As David Flusser has said, and David Flusser was an Orthodox Jewish scholar of Bible, of rabbinic literature, and of New Testament literature. He was a great scholar. As he said, quote, "The parables of Jesus belong to the genre of rabbinic parables." And I'm here to help you understand a way into that world of rabbinic parables so that you can understand better the parables of Jesus. This theme is also echoed by the words of David Wolpe. He's a truly gifted rabbi and healer of souls. He said when he began studying Jesus later in life, he says something that's very beautiful. He said, quote, "I was struck again and again by how Jesus' teachings were paralleled in my own tradition. So often, when we're of one faith and we study another faith, we're not able to hear the parallels. But he heard it. And though Rabbi Wolpe isn't here, I will say thank you, Rabbi Wolpe, for your depth and breadth and vision of faith that allows you to see holy beauty in the other faith tradition. So often we can't see. We don't have charity in our vision towards the other. So thank you, Rabbi Wolpe. And my goal and hope this evening, in the words of Marvin Wilson, who was another great Christian scholar of Judaism. In his words, he speaks of, wants to help us hear the parables of Jesus in a way that allow us to hear Jesus' words, quote, glisten in their own Semitic setting. Glisten, shine. We can read his words, but are they shining? Are they radiating? They really do shine when we know how to read them. And when we do so, when we read them in a way that is grounding them in their own ancient setting, we will be able to fully hear, or at least more fully hear, the healing gifts of wisdom offered by his truly beautiful heart, because his words come from a place of deep heart and deep soul. There's another Christian scholar of Judaism, Brad Young, and he spoke of the church's historic failure to understand the Jewishness and the Jewish roots and the Judaism of Jesus. The church, he said, as a result of their misunderstanding, has ultimately missed Jesus. And that's very similar to what Pope John Paul II said many years ago, when he spoke about meeting Jesus Christ is meeting Judaism. I would also add that if you want to meet Jesus Christ more, meet Judaism more. Understand how Jews understand Judaism, because that's how Jesus also understood Judaism, broadly speaking. So I pray we continue together discovering the Jewishness of Jesus. And I pray, this is not in your notes, I decided to leave it out. The notes are very brief. But I pray that we never hear words like the following uttered again. These were words uttered by a prominent New Testament scholar in Europe, in class. He said, the first thing you have to do to be a good Christian is to kill the Jew inside of you. There was a holy student in his class, and I wish I knew where I could find her to bless her. But she raised her hand, and she asked the professor a question. She said, "Do you mean I have to kill Jesus?" Those are holy words, and I hope the professor's heart heard those words. The parables of Jesus are healing gifts for the soul. So come, let us journey together along the way to, as it says in Matthew 13, to hear then a parable for all it has to say. Let us meet and greet his holy wisdom. Let us meet and greet his holy wisdom. So we will begin our exploration of the parables of Jesus with some background information, just brief. provide the necessary context for the wisdom found in the parables. We can't just read a text. We have to have a reference for the context. We will then explore this holy wisdom through the parable of the sower in Matthew 13, verses 1 through 9, and in Mark chapter 4, verses 1 through 9. Very briefly, Mark, just a few parallels. So, let's first begin with this word, parable. And parable in English is parable, but it comes from the Greek of parabole. It's in biblical Greek and it's in just normal Greek, outside common Greek. It's not an original word from the Greek New Testament. Parabole is a translation of, in what is called the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible about 2,200 years ago, a little more than that. And it translated the Hebrew Bible into Greek, the Jews of Alexandria. And there, when it speaks of proverbs or parables in Hebrew, it uses that word mashal. The Greek often translates it as parabole. So the Hebrew word that we're going to focus on for a moment, because that's the root of parable, parabole, is mashal. And a thorough discussion of mashal, or if you speak my Hebrew, mashal, we have two ways of speaking Hebrew. But a thorough discussion of the Hebrew mashal is beyond the scope of this evening's discussion. There are many layers and nuances that are associated with this word that aren't immediately relevant to our discussion this evening. But one definition of mashal that will help start the conversation about parables, again, parable, parabole, mashal, is this. It's simply a wise saying, a proverb, or even a parable, often expressed in metaphoric or symbolic instructional form. It's not just a simple manual. It often has some poetic aspect or symbolic aspect, and it's there for instruction. Now, they can be very short, or they can be more extended discourses, like you find in the book of Proverbs, chapters 1 through 9, or in Proverbs chapter 30 and 31. Some of them are extended discourses, teachings. The word mashal, I want to give us a sense, because remember, we're going to discuss mashal and then parable, because parable is rooted in, parabole is rooted in the word mashal. They knew what a mashal was in biblical times, because they knew biblical Hebrew and Aramaic. So, on your sheets, and if you're online, actually, these aren't, the Psalms aren't on this, are they? Are there Psalms here?
No.
No, okay. Fine. So the Psalms, I want to just give you a sense of what parable is in Hebrew, mashal, to help you hear the world. We know the word parable. We have parables of Jesus, we have parables in the Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament as you call it. But I want you to see how a parable lives in the mind of a poetic Jew. His parables are poetic. So if we look at Psalm 49, verses 4 and 5, more 5, but 4 gives it a little context. It says, "My mouth shall speak wisdom, and the meditations of my heart are understanding." So we've got wisdom and understanding. That is the verse right before the verse that discusses a parable. And then it says this, 49 verse 5. Ata lamashal ozni eftach achinor chidasi. I will incline, I will lean my ear into the parable. I will lean or incline my ear to the parable. Then it speaks of opening the riddles or the mysteries with the harp. We're not going to focus on the harp tonight. Next time. But that word, I will lean into, I will incline my ear to the parable, to the mashal. Jesus knew this verse. This word to lean, here it's atah, but it comes from the root of natah. It is leaning. And I'm certain in Polish you have the same idea behind this word. If you lean into something, it's because you're interested. If someone's speaking and you lean, it's because you're drawn by what they say. So the parables of Jesus are something you want to lean into, incline. But it also has to do with stretching. This word to lean is also to stretch. So and this is again in the context of a mashal, of a parable, parabole in Greek. It is telling you, this is how Jews read, well, soulful Jews read texts. And Jesus was a soulful Jew. Parables are meant to stretch our ability to hear. When you stretch, you lengthen. Parables will allow you to hear the holy better. But only if you're being drawn in, only if you're leaning into it, showing that interest and that dedication. In Psalm 78, we have actually, I think our verses might have been a little off in in Hebrew it's verses 4 and 5, in English it's verses 3 and 4. Now, I got to remember that because sometimes our verses are different. But this verse is the same. Sorry about that. In Psalm 78, it starts off with listening. Listen, my people. Ha'azina mi taidasi. Listen, my people, to my teachings. And then what? Hatu oznechem li'imrei fi. Lean, incline your ears again. Listen and incline your ear. Stretch your ear to the words of my mouth. And now it says, V'aftecha v'mashal pi. I will open my mouth with a parable. Then I will explain riddles of old. But I will open my mouth with a parable. This verse immediately draws me in. One, it's a parable, and I'm supposed to lean my ear in. But even more so, the language. I will open my mouth with a parable. Well, of course you're going to open your mouth. You're going to speak a parable. The rabbis take this word as an instruction for the soul. It's instructive. You will open your mouth with a parable, yes. But remember, we already have leaning into a parable. The idea here is not that you will open your mouth with a parable, but that the parable will help open you. It will come out of your mouth when you hear the words of a parable from the mouth. It's a redundant word. It should have just said, he said a parable, not open my mouth. But the idea of opening is that a mashal, a parable, is meant to open us. Because there's greater wisdom and poetry and metaphor within it. The prophets are often spoken of speaking a parable to Israel. So we don't speak in parables today. In fact, in Ezekiel it actually says in the Hebrew literally, speak, literally, parable a parable to the people of Israel. Not speak, parable a parable. So parable is almost a way, not just a teaching, but it's a way. And what it's trying to tell us is that there's a way of living with parables. It's poetic and it's metaphoric. So that's the root, this idea of mashal. That's what a parable, and there's much more, but that's what a parable is. That's the reference for it in the ancient Jewish world. Much more than that, but that's a part. So when you hear a parable from Jesus, remember, it's meant to open. It's meant for you to lean. It's meant to draw you in. Now, what exactly is a parable then? Parabole? So, a more academically sophisticated definition of parable, still awaits universal consensus. That was for you, Father. That was for the academic side of it. As scholars are unable to agree on her definitional parameters. What is a parable? It sounds very simple, but when you get a bunch of scholars, nobody agrees. Clyde Snodgrass is a brilliant scholar of parables. He's devoted his life to parables. And he said, quote, hardly anything about parallels is true of all of them. And, quote, possibly no definition will ever do that is broad enough to cover all forms. That's not very helpful. And I agree with him. I agree with Professor Snodgrass's cautionary warning regarding the ability, or even the utility, the value of seeking a comprehensive definition for what a parable is. We don't do that in Judaism. I never gave you a definition. I gave you a text that shows you how it impacts, how you experience it. Not here is what a parable is, classifying it. It's much broader than that. But I will nonetheless cautiously offer two definitions of parables. Definitions that speak to me more intimately than others. And it's not really a definition, as you'll see in a moment. So these descriptions or definitions are not technical in form. They're more like descriptive reminders expressing the overall purpose of a parable. I don't want you to leave here this evening thinking you can just read a parable. There's a purpose to the parables. Parables do have a purpose, and they have a vision for us in life. This is how we read parables, at least. And we need these holy reminders that I'm about to offer you in the form of a definition. We need these holy reminders in our sacred lives each day. Parables are central to sacred living. The first definition is actually from Professor Snodgrass himself, even though he said no definition will ever do. The second definition is from within the Jewish tradition, one from the Midrash and one from the Talmud. It's very similar, so I'm just going to combine them. One of them is over 1,000 years old. We're not sure how old the document is. Could be 1,300 years, but it's at least 1,000 years old. And the other one's about 1,500 years old. So Professor Snodgrass, again, he's a great scholar. Professor Snodgrass describes parables as, quote, listen to this, stories with intent. Stories with intent. Notice the word story. Story is central to the content of a parable. And I absolutely love this definition. I would actually have changed it from stories of intent, singular, to stories with intent, but to stories with intents, plural. There's more than one intent in Jewish thought behind every parable. So it is, for me, profoundly beautiful and appealing, reminding me that parables are always, first and foremost, stories that are intentional. And that idea of story is so central to the Jewish world of sacred life. Story. We need story in life. We all learn from stories growing up, and later on in life, we forget the story. But that's what Midrash is. That's what parables are. They're stories. They're wisdom in the form of stories and metaphors. And we have to learn how to hear them again. So, life as sacred story, meaning parable. Life is sacred story, meaning parable. Grounded in sacred intention, a story and intention. These are the paradigms or paradigmatic prisms through which we are now to view parabolic wisdom. They're stories, they have intentions, and it's necessary for us to walk through in life. There is intention and purpose behind their storied wisdom. It's not just a story with an intention, a message. It's also wisdom. This is wisdom in the form of story. And living more intentionally with awareness of parabolic story and parabolic wisdom will deepen our encounters with parabolic soul, with the soul of a parable. Stories with intent, that's Snodgrass's definition, is for me a language that draws. And I pray we are all drawn into greater parabolic song. Not just words, but song. The second definition is Jewish. I think that's very Jewish in form. It just comes from a brilliant Christian scholar who understands the depth of a parable. It's a story, and it's storied wisdom. The second definition of parable comes from the rabbis of old. One from the Talmud, it's our oral tradition, and one from the Midrash, which is our poetic, symbolic way of inquiring into the deeper layers of our sacred wisdom. Not just the surface layers, but searching deep within. And the idea there is they call parables ears for wisdom, ears for Torah. Oznaim LaTorah, ears for wisdom. Meaning Torah, our sacred text. Parables as ears. The imagery there is rich. Saying that parables are ears, or sometimes handles for wisdom, is telling us that if you want to understand your sacred tradition more deeply, your Christian faith, Jesus' parables, if you want to understand them more deeply, the sacred texts of the New Testament, you have to have ears that are parables. It means parables help us hear the deeper layers, the more poetic layers of the sacred. Parables are ears of sacred wisdom, ears of Torah. So if you immerse yourself in deep parabolic reflection, you reflect on the parables, you meditate, you listen, you open, you lean in, you will hear wisdom more deeply. Because wisdom always is deeper than simply the literal level. We need that story. We need that poetry. So parables enable hearing of the sacred more fully. Or I would say also parables ennoble us. They don't just enable us, allow us, but they make it more noble. They ennoble us in our ability to hear the holy. It's a poetic hearing that if we only read it on the level of prose, we're going to miss. So now that our ears are open, come let us, as it says in Matthew 13, come let us hear a parable. And let's walk through a couple of these texts briefly, and we will then open it up for questions. The first parable that we're going to discuss is the parable, well, the only parable, but the first version of it is in Matthew. The parable of the sower, Matthew 13, verses 1 to 9. And yeah, that's good. So, why don't we read it together? Would somebody like to read? Or do you want me to read? You want to read? Yeah, read it in Polish so that they understand. Or I could read it in Polish and make a fool out of myself.
Owego dnia Jezus wyszedł z domu i usiadł nad jeziorem. Wnet zebrały się koło niego tłumy tak wielkie, że wszedł do łodzi i usiadł, a cały lud stał na brzegu. I mówił im wiele w przypowieściach tymi słowami. Oto siewca wyszedł siać, a gdy siał, niektóre ziarna padły na drogę, nadleciały ptaki i wydziobały je. Inne padły na miejsca skaliste, gdzie niewiele miały ziemi i wnet powschodziły, bo gleba nie była głęboka. Lecz gdy słońce wzeszło, przypaliły się i uschły, bo nie miały korzenia. Inne znowu padły między ciernie, a ciernie wypujały i zagłuszyły je. Inne w końcu padły na ziemię żyzną i plon wydały. Jedno 100-krotne, drugie 60-krotne, a inne 30-krotne. Kto ma uszy, niechaj słucha.
Everything that he just said, yes. So what we just did to enter into our study, why didn't I just start with a parable? Because we have to learn, let us hear a parable. That's what it says in Matthew 13. I think it's verse 18. Yeah. Hear then a parable. Listen to the parable. We have to learn how to hear. We hear the words, but I don't want you to leave hearing the words today. I want you to hear the parable in a way that makes you want to lean in, that opens you, that deepens you, that broadens you. This parable is very, very significant. It's the first parable in, depending on how you count parables. Scholars don't agree on what a parable is, so they count them differently. But according to many, it is the first parable, and I think it is the first parable in one sense. It's the first time the word parable is used in the New Testament. We have some proverbs, proverbial sayings that don't sound like parables in the Sermon on the Mount. They're wonderful sayings, but we can debate whether they're a parable. Here, Matthew 13 is the first time the word parable is used. And it's in verse 3. The introductory verses are about Jesus. He went out of the house and he sat beside the sea, and there were great crowds around him, and he got into a boat and sat there while the crowd stood around him. Now we have, I don't know how they translated it. Can you help me with this? Does it say, and he told them many things in parables, saying, what's next? Let me see. I'll tell you. What verse is that? 3. Okay, I want to know, does it say listen?
Sower went out to sow.
So it doesn't say listen, a sower went out to sow. Does it say listen?
No, there is no listen.
Okay,
behold.
Good. Yeah. Well, that's what I wanted to ask.
Idu.
Right, but it's not here in the Polish.
It is.
It is?
Idu is Otto.
Yeah, but is it in the Polish? I don't.
Yes, behold.
Otto. Okay, good. So it is there. Excellent.
No. It is. It's like.
Got it. I didn't know if it was there. A lot of English translations don't say behold or Otto or Idu. They don't give the translation. So, what's important here to note, Matthew is the most Jewish gospel. His writing is more Jewish Greek than the other gospel writers. If you know Judaism and you hear his Greek, it sounds Hebrewish. It's either bad Greek or it's a blend of Hebrew and Greek, which is what it sounds like. Matthew is the most Jewish, and it's not an accident that this is the first parable. I don't think. I'm thinking Jewishly. I'm giving you my meditations on this. Firsts in Judaism are what we call beloved. Firsts are loved in Judaism. So are lasts, but firsts. This is the first parable. In Judaism, firsts aren't accidental. They're intentional. Remember stories with intent? This was chosen, I believe. I can't prove it, but I'm telling you how a rabbi would read this. If this were my quote, it is a holy text. But I believe it's a Jewish text, certainly. I believe there is intention behind placing this parable first. And Matthew 13 is rich with parables. Rich. So it's the most Jewish gospel, and it's the first parable. And it's the first gospel in not historic order, but biblical order. So we've got a lot of firsts here. In verse 3, where it says, however you say that, I, moiu, im, but where it says oto, sia, weka. That's the one, yeah. That word is critical in Jewish thought. It's a Greek word, but it's a Jewish author. Idu in Greek is very significant. The reason it is even more significant with the parable is that this is the only parable in the book of Matthew that has the word parable, parabole, and idu right next to it. One word separating it. Parables, parabolais, legon, idu. Right next to each other, one word. Idu is used with parables 2 more times. In the parable of the wedding and in the parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew 22 and 25. It is used, but not next to it. It's a few verses away. The first time we have a parable, it's paired with idu, and you'll see the significance of this word in a moment. Idu in English means, it has the meaning also of behold. And not listen so much. It's not seeing. I mean, it's seeing. The root of this, it's a command, but the root is not listening. That's better than some who leave it out. But the idea is beholding. I am seeing something. And in this word in Hebrew, when I hear this word idu by a Jew, I know what he's saying. He's saying hine. Now, if you look at Matthew, now we can go to this on this. Go to Matthew 1:20. That didn't work. So Matthew 1:20, chapter 1, verse 20. This is the first time the word idu is used. Again, firsts are significant. It's in the context of, I can't read it, but you can read verse 20. But just when he had resolved to do this, it's with Joseph and Mary, a little problem that they were having. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid. They don't have it in, do they not have it in the, I don't know what translation you have here, but is it, I don't read the Polish, is it there?
23.
Well, it's also in 23, but it's also in 20.
Yes, auto.
It is there, it's in the Greek? I mean, it's in the Polish?
It's Polish auto, yes. Yeah.
Okay, fine. It's not in the English of this text.
New Revised doesn't have it.
So in
Greek it's there, idu.
Yes, so it is there in the Greek. This is the first time idu is used. I know it's not in the English, sorry. This is a significant event in the New Testament. This is chapter 1 of Matthew. And an angel is appearing to Joseph. And there is then idu. This is not a word that is used casually. Something very significant is happening. And then it says again in verse 23, it says there, now we have it, but it says, look, idu, e parthenos, en gastri, exe. So, behold, look, the virgin shall conceive. Another significant event. Do you understand how significant this prophecy is? And it's prefaced with the word behold. I'm not going through all the beholds in the Hebrew Bible or in Matthew. But I want you to know when we use this in Matthew 13, this is the context, the setting. And the echo in Hebrew is unmistakable. The first time it is used there we go, I got it. In Hebrew is in Genesis 1:29. Maybe I don't have it. Where it's speaking of creation and everything, behold, everything was good or very good. That's a significant event. It's talking about the nature of creation. It sums it up with behold. It's very good. That is something to behold. Hine, idu. I start off with Matthew 13 as the first parable that is central to our lives because it begins with idu. And it's telling you there is something very significant to behold in this parable. As significant as we just read in Matthew 1 with Joseph and the angel appearing, or with the prophecy that a virgin will conceive, behold. If you saw that, you would behold. My hope and prayer after we go through this part of this parable is that you are idu, the parable. You are beholding. You are oto or oto? Oto? You are otoing the parable because they are meant to be beheld. Sorry about the butchering of the Polish. And you know how it ends if we look at verse 9? Sorry, Michal, can you give me verse 9 of Matthew, chapter 13? We began with what? Oto, right? What do we end with? Give me the... Yeah, but give me in the Greek, in the Polish. Do they have the Polish?
Yeah.
You can see the Polish? Aha. What is that? Shlusha?
Słucham.
Yes.
Okay. That, fine. Hear. Hear deeply. Shema in Hebrew. Behold, we begin. We end with hear. Shema is another word that is deeply, deeply central to sacred Jewish living, hearing. It just so happens the first parable in Matthew, the most Jewish gospel, begins with a most significant word, behold. Because it's telling you there's something to behold in this parable. Miraculous. Miraculous. Hine in Hebrew. And it ends with, I hope you heard. And in Hebrew, hearing doesn't just mean auditory function. Hebrew, to hear, Shema, also means to understand. I hope now that we've gone through this parable, and we will in a moment briefly, I hope you hear and understand something more deeply, because you've been drawn in, you're leaning into, it's opening you up. There's something profound here in this parable. And if you look at Mark 4, I can just tell, no Mark? Okay, so Mark 4 has this parable in it also. Mark 4, 1 through 9. And guess what it starts with? And
behold, Idu.
Can anybody hear that? They didn't hear you. The parable of the sower in Mark chapter 4 doesn't begin with Idu. Behold, folks, there's something here to see. It begins where Matthew ends with here. Rakowiecka, Idu. Here. What did we say in Jewish thought from the rabbis? That parables are what? Ears for wisdom. We're told in both these parables, the first parable of the sower, hear. Parables are ears for wisdom. They're going to give us the ability to hear deeper, sacred, holy wisdom. Only if we lean in and allow it to open us. Matthew begins with see and ends with hear. I understand, I saw, and now I heard and understand. Mark begins with both up front. Rakowiecka, Idu. Hear. Hear in a way that leads you to understanding, so that you will Idu, so that you will Oto, so that you will behold. The language is very, very exact. Remember, stories with intent? The rabbis take the words with great intent. They're intentional. They're intentional. They were thoughtful. They are there for a reason and a purpose. The order matters. It's not just he chose this word versus this word, or she chose this word and this word. They are intentional, and they are there to deepen us and draw us in. I will leave us with this on the parable. This is a meditation again on a parable, how I walk through parables. We had 4 different areas that the seeds were sown, right? We have to ask ourselves a question before we get to the where the seeds are sown. My question is, who is the sower? Okay? If we look at Matthew, after Jesus goes out on his boat, it says, and he told them many things in parables, saying, Idu, exelthen, aspedon, tu spede. Behold, the sower went out to sow. Who's the sower?
We are.
You're brilliant. You ruined it. You come up here and finish my talk. All right. Who else has another idea? What else? Who else could be the sower? There's no wrong answer here. Can they all agree with you? Okay. A lot of people say God is the sower. Maybe. Rabbis? They didn't have a lot of rabbis back then, but thank you. Okay, Jesus, yes, fair. But Jesus was sitting in a boat. If you look at verse 18, when it explains the parable, well, we'll leave that out for a moment. Just this is Jewish thought, because it's a Jewish parable from a Jewish rabbi in a Jewish gospel. When the the identity of the sower, or the event, whatever the event is not stated, take note. Because that's a Jewish way, this is one way of reading it, that's a Jewish way of saying, it's you, it's me, it's all of us. By not identifying who, it says, subtly, it's all of us. And the rabbis teach even when it says it's somebody, it's still us, but this is more explicit. And again, it's the first parable. So what is it teaching now? What's your name? Thomas. What is it teaching now? Us. It's not just about sowing, it's not some action. Parables, remember, are giving us wisdom, ears to hear wisdom. This somehow is going to help us more deeply hear the holy. Now we can look at where the sowing takes place. We got the who now, at least one. It could be others, but we're going to go with this one. Me, you. What happened at the first sowing of seeds? Where were they? Is it up here? Yeah. Let's see. Can you get it back so they can read that part? It's not, is it good ground or no? Not good ground. In fact, what kind of ground is it? It's rocky ground. Yeah. And what happened to it? The birds ate it. Taking this as a story with intent, as something, as a story that will give us ears to hear holy wisdom so we can live better in life. How does this relate to me? I don't sow seeds on rocky soil where birds come and eat it. So now what? How is that relevant to me? How is this helping me here? The first thing is, we all in life are always sowing something. Not seeds of plants, but we're sowing thoughts, we're sowing deeds. So the question is, where are you planting yourself? Where am I planting myself? It gives us 4 settings. Often in life, and we do all of them, often in life, we plant ourselves in a relationship, and it can't take root. We are there, we want to enter into deep love, but there's the soil of the other person's heart is too hard, and we can't root into their hearts or their lives. That's what we often do in life. And that's not going to lead to a beautiful harvest of love and relationship. So the first thing we always, and that's first, it's letting us know that so often in life, we plant our hearts, our lives, our souls, our minds on soil that is not able to allow it to blossom. And all that's going to happen is something else is going to eat it, meaning it's going to eat you up. It's going to consume you. The next sowing is on land. But what kind of land is it? It's land. It's not just rocks. It's not just on the way. But it doesn't have the ability to do what? To root deeply. It rooted, but not deeply. So then what happens? The sun comes up and what? It dries up. The imagery here is that not literally the sun, but the heat of life. Sometimes we plant, and it was the soil of that person. Their soul, their heart, their mind was open, and we got to plant. We'll just leave it in the context of a relationship. And I rooted. But at the first moment of struggle, of trial, of pain, when the sun, the heat of light, of life came down, there was no depth for me to root more deeply and draw those living waters. So I also died there. The seed just burned up. The sprout was there, but it couldn't root and fully blossom. Ask yourself, where am I in these two plantings? How do I plant in untillable soil? I can't till this, I can't root in this, or I am rooting in something that doesn't allow me to blossom. The third one, it is good soil. You can take root, but the problem is now what? Verse 7. And what did they do? How do they translate it in the Polish? The thorns did what to this seed after it like choked it? Is that, yeah, okay, good. So how often do we go into a relationship? And again, it applies in other contexts, but I'm making it's very immediate. We understand relationship. I'm in a relationship. I can actually root, and I'm sprouting. I'm in a community. But all of a sudden now, my person, my being, my light, my hope, my vision is being choked off. How do we surround ourselves, or why do we surround ourselves with thorns? People who choke us off. We do, but there's still hope for us. It tells us we do all of these, and these three are first for a reason. Because the final one is we found a wonderful field. It was good soil. It was good soil. And grain was brought forth in large numbers. Why does that last? Because the truth is, that's often the last choice we make. We make wrong choices in life, where we plant our hearts, our minds, our souls. And we wonder why we're not having a beautiful harvest, 100-fold, 60-fold, 30-fold. When you go through this parable, this is a parable for life. This will give you ears to hear wisdom. And how does it end in verse 9? Let anyone with what? Ears hear. My prayer is that we hear what parables are offering us. And in this first parable, it's telling us something so central to life that I think that's why it's first. Where are you planting yourself? In your sacred life, in your relational life, in your work life, your hobbies, your community? Where are you planting yourself? According to the story, the first 3 out of 4 ain't so great. But we have the potential for that 4th one, always. There's more, but I think that's where I will leave us, with the hope and the prayer that we are held, or that we behold what is in this. We're held by this wisdom that we see. We lean into the wisdom that we've heard. This is a parable, it's a mashal that we have to lean into. And we lean into it because it's drawing us and it opens us. And my hope is that after we go through any sacred text, but tonight it's the parable of the sower, my hope is that we end with ears that hear. Because in Judaism, ends, firsts are beloved, but so are lasts. They're both beloved. And he ended with hearing. And in Judaism, hearing is deeper than seeing. Shmiya, hearing, is deeper than Re'iyah, vision. Our vision, you go to a magician, it's subtlety. We can misperceive. But hearing is deeper because hearing also means Shmiya is also understanding. So we began with vision and we end with deep, deep listening that allows us to hear. But again, with ears. This is a very Jewish text that I hope leaves you with ears that hear. And again, that imagery of ears, the parable. Parables are ears of wisdom. I hope you're able to hear more wisdom in your life, in your sacred studies. And I pray that you plant on soil, in relationships, in life. You plant on land that allows you to root and blossom more fully. Because our world is being choked off. So many people's lives are being choked off, or they're not even sprouting, because the soil they're planting their hearts and minds and souls on is not enabling them. So remember this parable, and I look forward to hearing next time I come out how you've blossomed more beautifully because you've replanted your heart and your mind and your soul. Thank you all. Shalom.